Welcome to the 2020 BrewTubers Online Brewers Club Yeast Experiment. Brought to you by our proud sponsors. Imperial Yeast, a half stainless steel mash paddle sponsor of the BrewTubers Online Brewers Club, an official yeast provider of the Yeast Experiment. Imperial Yeast offers brewers of all sizes access to world-class yeast and the best possible customer and technical support. Be sure to grab a pack or two now at your local homebrew shop or Woody's Homebrew. And lastly, Hopsteiner, the official hops provider of the 2020 Yeast Experiment. Get brewing.
All right, guys, Nick Lesagore here, back again, Exit 12 Brewery, in the house for the last in the Exit 12 category of beer reviews for the 2020 BrewTubers Online Brewers Club Yeast Experiment, brought to you by the fine people at Hopsteiner, who provided hops for us, as well as other awesome goodies, stickers, hats, other swag, as well as Imperial Yeast, a half stainless steel mash paddle sponsor of the club, an official sponsor of the BrewTubers Online Brewers Club 2020 Yeast Experiment. There's a lot there to unpack, but what isn't a lot of and what isn't difficult is this beer. Hokie Homebrew, killing the game. Wyeast 1450, Denny's favorite. And then it says 50. When I first got into homebrewing, what I can say about Wyeast is that we used them in the beginning. We were learning how to homebrew. They made good yeast. And so we kind of shifted a little bit more towards Imperial, and now Exit 12 Brewery uses strictly Imperial even before they came on as a sponsor for the club. So we use Imperial as well as some others, but mainly it's Imperial. But Wyeast 1450 is what's on the docket. Awesome cap game going. That'll be great for my table that I'm making in utilizing caps, and we can talk about that more at another time. But let's pop this thing open. All right. Ooh, nice little crack. Save the cap, save the cap, save the cap. Keep the integrity of the shape of the cap intact. Perfect. And this beer was filled to the very top. There is no headspace on that bottle. All right. Really, this was such a great experiment for us BrewTubers. Hopefully the people watching, non-BrewTubers, as well as BrewTubers that didn't get into the challenge, into the experiment. We hope that it was as informational for you as it was for us. I know for Brandon and I, tasting all these different yeasts with the same bases really helped us understand how yeast plays a part in a beer. And I don't think people really understand. I think if you were to do something like this, it would give you so much better of an idea how important yeast is in the type of yeast that you choose. So let's fill this about halfway. Let's put this bottle down and let's get a little sniffa. All right. Caramel. Definitely caramel. I know for Denny's yeast, if I could just go through it real quick, it's a great kind of moderate yeast for a bunch of different styles from what I read on More Beer. Basically, it allows the caramel malts to come through, as well as any fruit flavors that may be in the hops. So one of the styles of like the 8 that were listed on More Beer was an American IPA that this yeast would be good for. It's definitely got a grainy aspect to it. It smells like you're almost like cold mashing. It's as if you mashed in a cooler overnight and let it sit overnight, and then you pop the cooler open at like 8 in the morning. It's not hot. It's like it would be like warm. That's what it smells like a warm grain. Maybe some really light phenolic character I'm getting. Could be the fermentation. There's nothing listed on the label for some reason for fermentation and the degree and if it was cold, dry hop. I can only assume that it was, but I don't know what the temperature was or anything like that. Well, this smells pretty good. So thank you to Hokie Homebrew. I think his name's Ben, for getting into this. And this is our last beer. And if I could just talk about the appearance, pretty clear. More on the hazy side than some of the other ones, but overall pretty clear. In the bubbles coming up, it's less carbonated than Andrews was. There are a lot of bubbles coming up, but they're very, very small, and they're coming up not as fast as Andrews was. But again, that could just be a carbonation thing, or it could be an aspect of the yeast. Who really knows? All right, so this one is similar to Andrews in that it's got a really high bitterness aspect. And the bitterness for this really sits on the front to middle of my palate, as opposed to Andrews, which was really more mouth coating in terms of the bitterness. It was just an overall bitterness. Both of them linger and stick around though. But this one doesn't have those kind of grainy, lagery aspects I was kind of describing with Andrews. But it does have some of the similar citrus characteristics. Very pithy. It's definitely got this interesting kind of orange rind thing going on. The mouth, this coats the mouth better than Andrews did. But on both, as I mentioned, the bitterness kind of lingers. It sticks around quite a bit, which is pretty characteristic of a West Coast style IPA. But it seems like on these two beers, the bitterness is coming across as a little more on the harsh side, as opposed to, I think, the beer that Brandon and I did, as well as the one that Wally did, and Jerry's possibly as well, is that the bitterness was a little less pronounced, a little more elegant, a little smoother, which may not be necessarily to style, but it just speaks to possibly the yeast characteristics. Very lip smacking, as I mentioned with the last beer too. This bitterness is definitely something that it would be great with the cheese plate that I have upstairs, the bootleg cheese plate. We don't have any charcuterie in terms of meats or anything, but we have some nice mozzarella, we have some nice brie, and crackers, and that's about it. that's the quarantine cheese plate. But this is good. This is nice. It's definitely got more caramel aspects to it than Andrews did, but it also has a lot of similarities as well in terms of the flavor and the aroma. Interesting. This is probably more to style than Andrews was, I would say, in terms of the beer, the yeast, and something that I'm going to continue to enjoy. So overall, this is our last review for the 2020 Yeast Experiment. Thank you to everyone for watching, for signing up, for brewing, for shipping, for everything. Thank you to our sponsors as well. If you can, buy a shirt, brewtubers.com/shop. This is just one of them, and enjoy. Cheers.